Hello everyone! Today we are going to dive into one of the most disturbing, chilling, and unsolved mysteries in American history. A case so gruesome and so wrapped in darkness that it became a permanent scar on Hollywood's glamorous image. This is the story of Elizabeth Short, more famously remembered by the world as the Black Dahlia. A woman whose brutal murder in 1947 shocked Los Angeles baffled detectives and left behind a trail of rumors, suspicions, and unanswered questions that remain unsolved to this very day. Elizabeth Short's life was not unlike many young women of her time who dreamed of fame, fortune, and the spotlight. Born on July 29, 1924, in Boston, Massachusetts, she grew up in a world far removed from the glittering streets of Los Angeles. Her early years were defined by hardship, instability, and a longing for something more. When she was just 6 years old, her father abandoned the family. He left a note saying he was going to work, but he never returned. Elizabeth, her mother, and her 4 sisters were left to struggle for survival. That betrayal would shape her childhood, leaving her yearning for stability and love. Despite the difficulties, Elizabeth grew into a striking young woman. Pale-skinned, with dark black hair and piercing blue eyes, she carried an aura of mystery even before her tragic end. Those who knew her described her as gentle and sweet, yet restless, someone who constantly searched for belonging and recognition. As she grew older, Elizabeth began dreaming of escaping her ordinary life. Hollywood, the city of dreams, was calling. Like countless others, Elizabeth hoped to find fame in the film industry. She moved between Boston, Florida, and eventually Los Angeles, chasing the promise of something bigger. But Hollywood in the 1940s was not the glamorous paradise seen on movie screens. Beneath the glimmer of the film reels was a dark underworld of crime, corruption, and exploitation. Many young women arrived with dreams of stardom, but instead found themselves chewed up and discarded by the system. Elizabeth, too, found herself caught between hope and despair, never able to break into acting as she had imagined. Still, Elizabeth cultivated an image that made her unforgettable. She dressed elegantly despite her limited means, often in black clothing, and wore her hair in soft waves. Locals began to nickname her the Black Dahlia, a reference to the popular 1946 film The Blue Dahlia, and her preference for dark attire. This nickname would take on a chilling irony after her death. Elizabeth's personal life was filled with fleeting romances and relationships. She was known to socialize often, and men were drawn to her mysterious beauty. However, she also carried a reputation of being elusive and somewhat secretive. While she sought love, her relationships never lasted long, leaving her adrift in the vastness of Los Angeles. On January 15, 1947, everything changed. A young mother walking with her child through a neighborhood in Los Angeles made a discovery so horrifying that it immediately drew headlines across the country. In a vacant lot on South Norton Avenue, she found the body of a woman. At first glance, she thought it was a mannequin discarded in the grass because the body appeared pale, stiff, and unnaturally positioned. But it was not a mannequin. It was Elizabeth Short. Her body had been mutilated in ways that shocked even the most hardened detectives. She had been cut in half at the waist, with the 2 sections of her body placed neatly on the ground. Her skin was drained of blood, giving her corpse an eerie white appearance. Her face had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears in what is known as the Glasgow smile. There were no signs of blood at the crime scene, which indicated that she had been killed elsewhere and her body carefully staged. The brutality of the murder sent shockwaves through Los Angeles. Newspapers quickly dubbed her the Black Dahlia, transforming Elizabeth Short from an aspiring actress into one of the most infamous murder victims in American history. The press sensationalized every detail of her life, portraying her alternately as a mysterious femme fatale or as an innocent dreamer destroyed by Hollywood's corruption. But the truth about who Elizabeth was and why she was murdered became more and more obscured with every headline. The Los Angeles Police Department launched one of the largest investigations in its history. Dozens of detectives were assigned to the case. Over 150 suspects were questioned, including doctors, actors, servicemen, and even mobsters. Yet the more the police dug, the more confusing the case became. Evidence was scarce, rumors spread like wildfire, and false leads consumed valuable time. Some believed Elizabeth had been killed by a jealous lover. Others thought it was the work of a sadistic serial killer. There were even theories of Hollywood cover-ups, with whispers that powerful men wanted her silenced. The case soon became less about solving the crime and more about the spectacle surrounding it. Newspapers played a massive role in the Black Dahlia story. Reporters often beat police to crucial evidence and witnesses, sometimes even contaminating the investigation. In fact, one newspaper was able to secure a letter from the supposed killer, which included some of Elizabeth's personal belongings, including her birth certificate and photos. The letter was cut from newspaper clippings and signed mockingly as the Black Dahlia Avenger. This suggested that the killer was taunting the police, but it also blurred the lines between fact and media manipulation. As days turned into weeks, Los Angeles was consumed by fear. Women were afraid to walk the streets at night. Parents worried about their daughters. The idea that such a horrific crime could be committed in a city filled with police and press attention shook the public's faith in law enforcement. And through it all, the identity of Elizabeth's killer remained a mystery. Detectives began focusing on certain individuals who seemed suspicious. One of the most infamous suspects was Dr. George Hodel, a wealthy and eccentric physician. Years later, his own son, Steve Hodel, a retired LAPD detective, would accuse him of being the Black Dahlia killer. Evidence pointed to Hodel's fascination with sadistic art and his disturbing history of abuse, but at the time, police could not gather enough proof to charge him. Another suspect was Mark Hansen, a Hollywood nightclub owner who was known to have been close to Elizabeth. Rumors suggested she had rejected his advances, possibly leading to violence. But again, no evidence could firmly connect him to the crime. The investigation dragged on, and the more it did, the colder the case became. By the end of 1947, despite endless media coverage, the Black Dahlia murder was still unsolved. Elizabeth Short's death was reduced to speculation, scandal, and rumors that overshadowed the reality of her tragic life. The story of the Black Dahlia is not just about a murder. It is about how society consumes tragedy. Elizabeth was transformed from a struggling actress into a legend of horror, her identity lost in the noise of gossip columns and police failures. Even today, historians and true crime experts continue to debate the case, trying to separate fact from fiction. And yet, through it all, one question remains hauntingly unanswered: who killed Elizabeth Short, and why? The discovery of Elizabeth Short's mutilated body on that cold January morning was only the beginning of a nightmare that would grip Los Angeles. The case, already gruesome in its details, began to grow stranger with every passing day. What had happened to Elizabeth in the days leading up to her death? Who was she with? And why had someone gone to such extraordinary lengths to not only kill her, but to dismember her in a way that seemed designed to shock the world? Detectives started retracing her final days. They learned that Elizabeth had been staying in Los Angeles, drifting between hotels, friends' apartments, and sometimes even with men who offered her temporary shelter. She did not have a stable home, and her nomadic lifestyle made it difficult for investigators to trace her movements. What was known was that she was last seen alive on January 9, 1947. She had been dropped off at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles by a man she was dating at the time, Robert Manley, a traveling salesman. Elizabeth told him she was going to meet her sister, who was visiting from Boston. But she never showed up to that meeting, and no one could confirm who she saw next. The 6 days between January 9 and January 15 remain a mystery. Detectives called it the missing week. Where was Elizabeth during this time? Was she being held captive? Did she willingly spend time with someone she trusted, not knowing her fate awaited her? Witnesses claimed to have seen her in restaurants, bars, and even at parties, but none of these sightings could be verified. It was as though Elizabeth had vanished into the city's underbelly before re-emerging as a victim in the most horrific way possible. Then came the chilling letters. On January 23, 1947, a local newspaper received a package that contained Elizabeth Short's birth certificate, photographs, and an address book with the name Mark Hansen embossed on the cover. Alongside these items was a letter written with newspaper clippings, declaring, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." True to the writer's word, more letters arrived over the following days, mocking the police and the press. One of them read, "I will give up in Dahlia killing if I get 10 years. Don't try to find me." Another chilling message was signed, "The Black Dahlia Avenger." Whoever sent these letters seemed to know intimate details of Elizabeth's life and death. The letters confirmed that the killer was watching the investigation closely, enjoying the media circus. However, forensic testing of the letters proved inconclusive. No fingerprints could be matched, and the DNA technology that might have solved the case was decades away. The taunting letters only deepened the mystery. The police were overwhelmed. Hundreds of false confessions poured in, with men and women alike claiming responsibility for the crime. Some were attention seekers, others mentally unstable, and a few possibly trying to shield someone else. At one point, the LAPD announced that they had over 60 serious suspects, but as the months dragged on, none could be definitively linked to Elizabeth's murder. Among those suspects, Dr. George Hodel stood out, a wealthy physician with connections to Hollywood's elite. Hodel lived in a mansion on Franklin Avenue, known as the Soden House, designed by the famous architect Lloyd Wright. The house itself looked like something out of a nightmare. Its Mayan-inspired design, with high walls and shadowy corners, became an eerie backdrop to Hodel's bizarre life. Years after the murder, George Hodel's own son, Steve Hodel, who had become an LAPD detective, began investigating his father. Steve claimed that George had not only the medical knowledge required to dissect a body so cleanly, but also a history of violence and abuse. Even more disturbing, the LAPD had once wiretapped Hodel's home during an investigation in the 1950s. On the recordings, George could be heard saying, "Supposin' I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary because she's dead." While this was never enough to secure a conviction, it added a sinister shadow to his reputation. But Hodel was not the only suspect. Some believe the killer might have been connected to organized crime. Elizabeth was known to frequent bars and clubs tied to mob figures, and it wasn't unthinkable that she might have crossed paths with dangerous people. Others suspected Mark Hansen, the nightclub owner, whose address book had appeared in the package sent to the press. Hansen admitted Elizabeth had stayed at his house a few times, and while he claimed he had no involvement in her death, rumors swirled that she had rejected his advances. Rejection in the world of power-hungry men often carried dangerous consequences. The theories only multiplied as the years passed. Some speculated that Elizabeth's death was linked to a series of other unsolved murders of women in Los Angeles during the 1940s, suggesting the work of a serial killer. Others thought her death was ritualistic, pointing to the careful staging of her body, the precision of the cuts, and the eerie way her corpse was drained of blood. Some even tied the case to Hollywood itself, suggesting that someone within the film industry may have been involved, either as a lover or a predator. One of the darkest elements of the Black Dahlia case is how Elizabeth herself was portrayed. Instead of being remembered as a victim, the press painted her as a promiscuous woman, a drifter, or even a criminal. Headlines implied that she had invited danger by living a reckless lifestyle. This victim-blaming narrative overshadowed the real tragedy, that she was a young woman trying to find her way in a city that often preyed upon women like her. The years turned into decades, and the Black Dahlia case became one of the most infamous cold cases in American history. Yet, even as time passed, the mystery only deepened. Books were written, films were made, and endless documentaries sought to uncover the truth. Each theory seemed compelling, but none could be proven. In the early 2000s, Steve Hodel reignited public interest in the case by publishing books accusing his father, George Hodel, of being the killer. He pointed to medical knowledge, photographs he claimed depicted Elizabeth, and even handwriting analysis linking his father to the taunting letters. While Steve's theory gained attention, it also faced criticism. Some argued that his evidence was circumstantial, that his accusations were motivated by personal demons rather than undeniable proof. Still, for many, George Hodel remained the most likely suspect. Other modern investigators have attempted to use forensic technology to solve the crime. In recent years, some of the old evidence was re-examined, but degradation over time has made it nearly impossible to extract usable DNA. The letters, photographs, and belongings remain tantalizing clues, but yield no clear answers. And so, the Black Dahlia murder lingers in the shadows of history, an open wound on the city of Los Angeles. It is a story of a woman who dreamed of stardom, but became a symbol of Hollywood's darkest side. It is a story of corruption, media frenzy, and a justice system that failed to bring closure. Elizabeth Short was more than a murder victim. She was a daughter, a sister, and a woman with dreams. Yet her legacy has been reduced to a gruesome nickname and a mystery that refuses to die. Some say her ghost still haunts Los Angeles, wandering near the places she once visited, as if searching for the justice denied to her in life. The Black Dahlia case reminds us of the thin line between beauty and horror, between dreams and nightmares. It reminds us that behind every headline there is a human story, one that deserves compassion, not sensationalism. As we close this journey into one of history's most haunting unsolved mysteries, we are left with chilling questions that may never be answered. Who killed Elizabeth Short? Was it a jealous lover, a deranged doctor, a powerful Hollywood figure, or someone whose name has long been forgotten? Perhaps the truth is buried with the past, locked away in the silence of those who knew but never spoke. Or perhaps, someday, a new piece of evidence will emerge, finally bringing justice to the woman the world remembers as the Black Dahlia. Until then, the Black Dahlia murder will remain an eternal riddle, Hollywood's darkest secret, a story of beauty, tragedy, and horror that continues to fascinate and terrify us more than 70 years later.